Most people believe poverty is about income. It isn't. Income is visible. Poverty is structural. It is not just a number in your bank account, it is a pattern in your life. And patterns are harder to break than numbers. Warren Buffett once said that risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. Most people think they are poor because they don't make enough money. But the real danger is this: they don't understand the forces pulling them backward. Hard work is not rare. Millions of people wake up early, work long hours, come home exhausted, repeat. Effort is not the problem. Direction is. Imagine running at full speed. Your lungs burn, your legs ache, you feel productive. But the ground beneath you is slowly moving the opposite way. No matter how hard you push, you stay in the same place. That is the invisible gravity of low income. It is not laziness, it is misalignment. And this gravity works quietly. It doesn't scream, it doesn't announce itself, it just keeps you stuck. There are 4 silent forces that keep hardworking people poor. Not emotional reasons, not motivational excuses, structural forces. If you don't see them, you can't escape them. The first force is survival mode. When money is tight, your brain changes. You don't think in years, you think in days. Rent, fuel, groceries, minimum payments. Your attention narrows. Psychologists call it bandwidth scarcity. When resources are low, the mind focuses on immediate threats. That focus helps you survive, but it prevents you from building. When you are constantly solving urgent, survival mode makes you efficient at staying afloat, but terrible at escaping the ocean. This is why 2 people can work equally hard, yet end up in completely different places. One works from pressure, the other works from margin. Warren Buffett is obsessed with one idea: margin of safety, not just in investing. In decision-making, he leaves room for mistakes, room for downturns, room for patience. Most low-income earners have 0 margin. One emergency can erase months of effort. One unexpected bill can reset progress to 0. Without margin, every decision becomes defensive, and defensive decisions rarely create wealth. To escape, the first step is not earning more. It is creating breathing room. Even a small buffer changes behavior. When you are not panicking, you think differently. You negotiate better. You take smarter risks. Survival mode feels responsible, it feels disciplined, it feels mature, but it has a hidden cost. When every dollar already has a destination, your future has no funding. You cannot invest, you cannot experiment, you cannot wait, and wealth belongs to people who can wait. Think about this carefully. If every month ends at 0, you are not building a staircase. You are running on a loop, and loops feel productive because they are busy. But busy is not the same as advancing. The poor are not trapped because they lack effort. They are trapped because every decision is urgent. Urgency shrinks time horizons, and short time horizons destroy compounding. This is why raising income alone doesn't fix the problem. If you increase income without increasing margin, you just upgrade the treadmill. Better apartment, better car, higher payments, same pressure. The invisible gravity gets stronger. So the first strategic move is not make more money. It is this: reduce pressure, lower fixed expenses, create a small emergency reserve, stabilize cash flow. Even 3 months of breathing room changes your psychology. When survival is no longer screaming, strategy can finally whisper, and that whisper is where escape begins. But survival mode is only the first force. The second one is more dangerous, because it feels like success. It looks like progress. It even earns social approval. And yet, it quietly drains the very fuel needed to build wealth. The second force is status spending. Most people don't buy things, they buy signals. Signals that say, I'm doing okay, I've made it, I belong. Humans are social creatures. We measure ourselves against others. And when you grow up around scarcity, success becomes visible proof. The nicer car, the bigger apartment, the brand name clothes. None of these are evil. But when income rises slightly and lifestyle rises faster, you lock yourself into higher fixed costs. Higher fixed costs mean higher pressure. Higher pressure means back to survival mode. It becomes a cycle. Earn more, spend more, stress more, repeat. Warren Buffett lives in the same house he bought decades ago, not because he can't afford more, but because he understands something powerful. Every dollar you don't spend is a worker you can hire. Money is either a trophy or an employee. Poor and middle-class households often turn money into trophies. Wealthy households turn money into employees. An employee works for you every day. A trophy just sits there. Status spending creates the illusion of progress. But real progress is invisible. It is equity, ownership, assets that produce income. Those things are quiet. They don't get likes. They don't impress neighbors, but they compound, and compounding is silent at first, which makes it easy to ignore. The dangerous part about status spending is that it feels earned. You worked hard, you deserve something nice, and sometimes you do. But if every reward reduces your margin, you are rewarding yourself with chains. This is why many hard-working people stay financially fragile even when their income improves. They upgraded appearance, but not structure. They improved lifestyle, but not leverage. And without leverage, income alone cannot create wealth. You must decide, are you building signals or are you building strength? Signals are visible. Strength is durable. One makes you look successful. The other makes you unstoppable. And most people never notice the difference until it is too late. Survival mode keeps you reacting. Status spending keeps you performing. But the third force is what keeps you capped. It limits how high you can climb, no matter how disciplined you become. And it hides inside something most people believe is safe. A job feels safe. It feels stable. It feels predictable. And that predictability is comforting. You know when you'll get paid. You know roughly how much. You know what is expected from you. But there is a ceiling hidden inside that comfort. It is called linear income. Linear income means this: you trade time for money. More hours equals more pay. Fewer hours equals less pay. At first, this seems fair. Work more, earn more, but look closer. Time is limited, energy is limited, attention is limited, which means your income has a natural cap. No matter how skilled you become, you are still constrained by 24 hours, and as you age, energy declines. If your income depends entirely on your hours, your future depends entirely on your stamina. That is fragile. Warren Buffett does not trade hours for money, he owns assets. Ownership breaks the ceiling. When you own a business, a share, a piece of productive capital, money is no longer tied directly to your physical effort. It becomes tied to systems, and systems can scale. This is where most hardworking people get stuck. They optimize within the job. They negotiate slightly higher salaries. They add certifications. They climb slowly, all good moves, but still inside the same structure. Imagine climbing a ladder. You move up step by step, but the ladder itself only reaches a certain height. Optimize, job, negotiate, higher salaries, certifications, climb slowly. Climbing a ladder, certain height. No matter how determined you are, you cannot climb past the top of the ladder. The problem is not your climbing ability, it is the ladder. Linear income is a ladder with a ceiling. Ownership is an elevator without one. This does not mean quit your job tomorrow. It means understand the limitation clearly. A job should fund ownership, not replace it. The middle class often aims for higher income. The wealthy aim for higher leverage. Leverage means your input creates disproportionate output. A single smart decision can generate returns for years. An investment can grow while you sleep. A piece of equity can appreciate without additional labor. That is how ceilings disappear. But building ownership requires something uncomfortable. Delayed gratification. It requires using today's effort to build tomorrow's freedom, and that feels slower at first, because linear income gives immediate feedback. You work, you get paid. Ownership gives delayed feedback. You invest, you wait. Most people quit during the waiting phase. They return to what feels productive. Busy, active, immediate. But wealth rewards patience. The third force keeping hardworking people poor is believing that income equals wealth. Income is cash flow. Wealth is assets. Cash flow without assets is like water without a container. It flows in. It flows out. Assets are the container. Without them, no matter how strong the flow, nothing accumulates. This is why someone earning 6 figures can still feel financially fragile. And someone earning less but consistently acquiring assets can quietly build security. If your entire financial life depends on your next paycheck, you do not own your time. You rent it. Ownership is how you buy it back. But even ownership alone is not enough, because there is a final force. And this one determines who accelerates forward and who slowly falls behind, even if both are working hard. It is the force of compounding, and it does not care about effort. It only cares about structure. Compounding is quiet. It does not look dramatic. It does not feel urgent, and that is why most people underestimate it. Compounding is simple. Small advantages, repeated consistently, grow into massive gaps. But the painful truth is this: compounding works for everyone. The question is not whether it works. The question is in which direction. There are 2 types of compounding: asset compounding and liability compounding. When you invest in productive assets, returns begin earning returns. A dollar becomes more than a dollar. Time becomes an ally. But when you carry high-interest debt, interest earns interest against you. A dollar borrowed becomes more than a dollar owed. Time becomes an enemy. Both forces are mathematical. Both are predictable. But they produce opposite destinies. This is the compounding divide. Most hard-working people are unknowingly compounding liabilities: credit card balances, car loans, consumer upgrades, buy now, pay later habits. Each payment seems manageable. Each decision feels small. But small decisions repeated monthly create exponential pressure. Compounding does not explode overnight. It creeps. At first, the numbers are small. Then one day, the gap is enormous. Warren Buffett became wealthy not because he chased high returns, but because he respected time. He started early, stayed consistent, avoided unnecessary losses. Avoiding loss is more powerful than chasing gain. If you lose 50%, you must gain 100% to recover. Protection is leverage. This is why high-interest debt is so destructive. It compounds in the wrong direction, and it steals future options. Every dollar spent on interest is a dollar that cannot invest. Every dollar invested is a worker hired for life. The wealthy understand this difference deeply. They prioritize assets that produce value: businesses, index funds, productive investments, not because they are glamorous, but because they scale with time. Time is neutral. It multiplies whatever structure you build. If your structure is debt-heavy, time magnifies stress. If your structure is asset-heavy, time magnifies freedom. And here is the uncomfortable truth: the early years matter more than the later years. Compounding is front-loaded with discipline and back-loaded with reward, which means the beginning feels slow, very slow. You invest, the numbers barely move, you save. The progress looks insignificant. This is the phase where most people quit because nothing impressive is happening, but beneath the surface, a foundation is forming. The first 100,000 is difficult, not because of the math, but because of behavior. It requires resisting lifestyle inflation, avoiding unnecessary debt, staying patient while others show off. That discipline creates asymmetry. Once assets begin generating meaningful returns, the effort required decreases. Money begins assisting you. This is when escape velocity happens, not suddenly, but structurally. The compounding divide is the line between reacting to bills and designing your future, between hoping for raises and benefiting from growth, between working for money and having money work for you. And once you cross that divide, gravity weakens permanently. But there is still one final piece, because understanding these forces is not enough. You must integrate them into a system, a repeatable structure, something durable, and that is where most people fail. They change behavior temporarily, but they never change identity. And wealth at its core is identity expressed over time. Information is everywhere, advice is everywhere, motivation is everywhere, and yet financial struggle remains common because information does not change outcomes, identity does. Most people say, "I want to be rich." Very few say, "I am becoming someone who builds wealth." That difference seems small. It is not. When identity shifts, behavior follows automatically. If you see yourself as someone surviving, you optimize for relief. If you see yourself as someone building, you optimize for strength. Relief seeks comfort. Strength seeks leverage. This is the final force. Identity inertia. Your current results are not random. They are aligned with who you believe you are. If deep down you believe, "People like me don't build wealth. We're just trying to get by. Rich people are different," you will unconsciously sabotage growth, not intentionally, but structurally. You will hesitate to invest, delay ownership, upgrade lifestyle too early, avoid calculated risks, because wealth would conflict with your self-image, and humans protect identity more than money. Warren Buffett did not just buy stocks, he became an allocator of capital. That is identity. He did not see money as spending power, he saw it as responsibility, as a tool, as a resource to deploy intelligently. That shift changes everything. When you see money as a worker, you treat it differently. When you see yourself as an owner, you behave differently. When you see time as capital, you invest it differently. The four forces were never about intelligence, they were about structure, survival pressure, status traps, income ceilings, compounding direction. But structure begins in the mind and then expresses in systems. Here is the integration: create margin, control fixed costs, build emergency reserves, reject status inflation, separate signals from strength, use income to buy ownership, even small pieces, respect compounding, avoid high-interest debt, invest consistently, and most importantly, upgrade identity. Stop asking, "How can I look successful?" Start asking, "How can I become structurally wealthy?" Because wealth is not an event, it is architecture. It is invisible at first, quiet, unimpressive, disciplined. Then one day people call it luck. They say you were fortunate, that timing was perfect, that you had advantages. They never saw the margin, the restraint, the patience, the ownership decisions. They only see outcomes. But you will know the truth. It was never about working harder. It was about escaping gravity. And gravity is invisible until you step outside of it. The hardworking stay poor not because they lack effort, but because effort without structure creates motion without progress. Once structure changes, progress compounds. Once identity shifts, discipline becomes natural. And once compounding turns in your favor, time becomes your ally. You don't need to be extraordinary, you need to be aligned. Aligned with margin, aligned with ownership, aligned with compounding, aligned with identity. Do that long enough, and poverty stops being a life sentence. It becomes a starting point, and starting points do not determine endings, structures do.